Abraham, look, I want to quote Justice Minister Levine here a little bit today. I think it's significant. He's calling today's, opening hearing a, quote, a mortal blow to democracy and the status of the Knesset. I mean, those are extreme words, no matter where you take it. It's an extreme position to take publicly, that this is a mortal blow to democracy today. So can you explain his viewpoint on this?
So I think that this hearing really goes to the heart of why judicial reform is needed to begin with, right? What makes us citizens as opposed to subjects is the fact that we can design the legal system, right, that binds us through our elected officials. And right, so Israel, right, as you know, has no formal constitution. In a country with no formal constitution, there's no democratic legitimacy to strike down law. In 1995, the Knesset, the Supreme Court discovered such a constitution based on a basic law in the Mizrahi decision, and it was always suspected that there was some legal hocus pocus that the Supreme Court did, but the Supreme Court argued, no, the Knesset passed this basic law. We're just implementing what the powers that the Knesset gave us. Now the Supreme Court is arguing that not only are they supreme over regular laws, but even over basic laws themselves. And so, right, the court ruled that basic laws are Israel's highest laws. So if the court is above them, then that means the court isn't bound by any sort of positive law, by any sort of text, by anything besides its own goodwill.
Well, I'll put this back to you. I think the concern I'm hearing a lot is that people are concerned by this sort of oversight mechanism being taken away from a parliament that doesn't seem to have a lot of oversight. People aren't directly electing these lawmakers.
They would like to have none.
Lawmakers are beholden to party leaders, not really voters. That's not the way the system works anymore. So when you have that kind of top-leaning power, where's the check on that, if not the Supreme Court?
Well, okay. Well, first of all, there are a few things to say here, right? Reasonableness, the Israeli form of reasonableness, is a certain, right, administrative grounds created in a 1980s decision. It doesn't have any parallel anywhere in the world. But above this, right, Jeremy Waldron is one of the probably the most important legal scholar in the world. He just gave a lecture 2 months ago in Oxford, speaking specifically about the Israeli reforms, and he said, right, not all checks and balances, right, are equal, right? We could also appoint, right, a king over us who would have a benevolent king who would have veto power. But at the end of the day, right, in any system, there's somebody with the final word, and anybody can screw up. The question is, when that person screws up, what can we do as citizens? Can we get rid of them?
Look, another judicial overhaul, Abraham. Following the campaigns closely, recent years, just last year, let's talk about the political campaign. This was barely, if at all, a talking point on the campaign trail for the people who are now elected in government. Look, when the Prime Minister had his opening speech about the priorities for this government, it has to do with cost of living, internal crime, diplomacy. Again, not a mention, I don't think, of this. Suddenly, it's vaulted to the top of the priority list, appearing to be suddenly at the cost of shredding national cohesion. Why is it worth it to this government to basically destroy national cohesion? Why, in your opinion, is it so important for the government to do this now in this way?
I mean, we from these whole events, right, it underscores the fundamental imbalance of power between the Knesset and the Supreme. Okay, right. If the Knesset wants to pass a law, right, it needs a parliamentary majority. It needs to go through 3 hearings, a public debate. There's protest. If the Supreme Court wants us to move from a parliamentary system to a constitutional system, bam, it writes a decision. If it wants the attorney generals to have a veto power over government policy, not based in law, bam, it makes a decision. A reasonableness, a decision.
Those things that have happened in the last 6 months that have caused this government to say nothing else matters. But
all of these issues that have been spoken about have not been created by this government. They've been spoken about for 30 years. When right, Aharon Barak, right, he was the chief justice, who was the architect of Israel, what he called Israel's constitutional revolution. Right, his ideological opponent on the court, Moshe Landau, was a conservative judge. He warned 30 years ago that if the Supreme Court keeps on taking more and more power from the Knesset, then there's going to be an explosion. And other parties, right, who are not in this government, parties who now are on the left and have joined the protests, they've in the past also proposed various proposals to take back power from the court and bring it back to the Knesset.
For example, the court ruled in favor of the settlement outpost of Eviatar, that it could not be removed, from an area there. So, I think this was overlooked by a lot on the right side of the spectrum as, this wasn't a liberal decision on their part. Look, the big question right now, Abraham, and we're hearing a lot of hints over this, but we're not sure, will this government obey the court's decisions on this issue here? And what if not?
I mean, I find it funny, right? The way the question is phrased, right? Will the Supreme Court obey? Will it respect? Will the government respect the court's decision? But will the Supreme Court respect the law that the Knesset has passed? According to the Supreme Court's own rulings, basic laws are the highest laws in the country. If the Supreme Court says that it has the power to strike down the basic laws, then that means that the Supreme Court is not bound by any law.
So basic laws, first of all, passed by a simple majority under a different headline is basically what differentiates basic laws from regular law, right?
Exactly. So you can't have it both ways. So the justification to begin with for the Supreme Court to strike down laws was because of the basic law.
Is there something inherently different in a basic law?
No, exactly. So you can't have it both ways. The justification to begin with for the Supreme Court to strike down laws was based on the human dignity and liberty basic law, which was passed in the exact same way, which has absolutely none of the characteristics that you would associate, right, with a constitution.
So the government, you're saying, is not bound to respect anything the court decides here?
There is a normative hierarchy. Either basic laws are just regular laws, in which case the court never to begin with had any power to strike down laws, or according to the Supreme Court's reasoning, basic laws are the highest laws in the country, in which case the Supreme Court is itself bound to the law and is not above the law.
A lot of people concerned also by what appears to be a lot of attacks being leveled against the Attorney General at this point too. We have former intelligence chiefs even saying, hey, these are really dangerous signs for any government on top of what's happening here. Is the Attorney General likely to go soon, Abraham? Does he seem like the next big target for them?
I wouldn't know. I would want to know the legal counsel to the government, right? When they're opposed to everything that the government promotes, who exactly are they? Who exactly are they representing? And in fact, the attorney general, that's it ties in neatly to the power of the court, given that the attorney general's power is not entrenched in any law. It's based on a Supreme Court decision, right? That the attorney general, a lawyer, right, has binding power over the government, and they're the only ones who can give illegal representation to the government. So a murderer, a rapist, the worst person that you can think of has a right to legal counsel in court, but the attorney general can choose whether or not the government deserves to have legal counsel.